Hi everyone, welcome back. So today we are going to be learning frequency separation. Now this is one of the most popular techniques used for professional skin retouching in Photoshop. Before I proceed, what exactly is frequency separation? So frequency separation is a retouching technique that separates an image into two parts. Now one part contains the color while the other part contains the texture. This gives you the power to smoothen uneven skin without removing the natural skin texture. For example, if someone probably has an uneven skin tone and a few pimples, you'll be able to smooth the skin color on one layer while you remove the pimples on another layer. So this gives much more natural results than simply blurring the entire face. So even after you're editing, you'll still be able to see the person's skin texture. So let's get right into it. The first thing I did was duplicate the background layer twice by pressing Ctrl J. Then I renamed the first layer texture, which contains the skin details, and I renamed the second layer color, which contains the skin tones and color. Next, I selected my texture layer and closed the eye of the texture layer. Then I went to my color layer. I went to filter, blur, then selected Gaussian blur. For this image, I used a radius of 7 pixels. The idea is to blur the skin just enough for the texture to disappear while keeping the facial features visible. After clicking OK, I selected the texture layer, then opened the eye of the texture layer. Next, I went to image, then apply image, and these are the settings I used. Layer, I selected color. Blending, I selected subtract. The scale was on 2 and the offset 128. After clicking OK, I changed the blending mode of the texture layer from normal to linear light. At this point, the image looked exactly like the original, but it had now been separated into two layers. So to retouch my image, I selected the color layer because this is where we smooth uneven skin tone. Now using the lasso tool, I selected a small area of the skin. It's always better to work on small sections so the retouching will look more natural. After making the selection, I went to filter, I went to blur, selected Gaussian blur again. I adjusted the radius just enough for the colors to blend smoothly without affecting the facial features. Now I repeated this process on other parts of the face and also on the body. Now if you look at the picture, you notice that the skin became smoother, but the natural pores and textures were still visible because they were preserved on the texture layer. Now you can go ahead to reduce the opacity of your image. Now while you're reducing the opacity of your image is if the blur on the subject is too much. So I'm reducing mine to about 70% from 100%. So at this stage we have successfully retouched this image using frequency separation. So now that we've learned how to perform frequency separation manually, let's look at a much faster method using Photoshop actions. In my previous video, I already showed you where you can find the action button. But first, what is an action? An action in Photoshop is a feature that records a series of editing steps so they can be played back automatically with just one click. So instead of repeating the same process every time you want to edit an image, Photoshop performs this step for you, making your workflow much faster. For example, instead of manually creating the color and texture layers every single time you want to edit a picture, frequency separation action creates them automatically in just a few seconds. Now let's see how it works so you understand better what I'm saying. Go to your action panel and select the frequency separation action that has already been created. I've included this action in the description box below, so feel free to download it and install it in your Photoshop. Next, I clicked the play button. You'll notice a dialog box appear. Remember the manual frequency separation we did earlier? I used a radius of 7 pixels for the first Gaussian blur on the color layer. However, for this image, I'm using 2 pixels instead. This is to show you that there isn't one fixed value for every image. Within a few seconds, Photoshop automatically created the color and the texture layer without me having to repeat all the setup steps. So the high frequency is the texture layer and the low frequency is the color layer. So this has been named differently. So whatever you name yours depends on you. From this point onward, the retouching process remained exactly the same as the manual method where you use your lasso tool to select a part of the skin and apply Gaussian blur. So I repeated this process on the other areas of the face and the body that needed retouching. As you can see, the only difference between the manual method and the action method is the setup. The editing process remained the same. So using action is especially helpful when you're editing multiple portraits because it saves time while you're still producing professional results. And that brings us to the end of this frequency separation tutorial. I hope you found it helpful. So if you enjoyed this lesson, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss future Photoshop and photography tutorials. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.